Morning, everyone.
Good morning, Rabbi.
We're learning Mishnah Yishkalim, Perek Dalet, Chapter 4, Mishnah Beis, Mishnah 2. So the Mishnah is going to be continuing discussing what are the things that we buy, that we purchase with the money that is destroyed 3 times a year from the chamber that contains all the shkalim. And all the examples until now have been communal sacrifices. That's what comes out of that money. Now, it's just important to review. They have the collection of the monies that are donated for the half shekel for the communal sacrifices are all placed in a specific chamber in the Beis HaMikdash. And as we said, 3 times a year, they make a withdrawal to buy the communal sacrifices. So the Mishnah, the first Mishnah gave us examples of that. And now we're going to continue. The Para Aduma. Para Aduma was a completely red cow that was slaughtered and burned on the Mount of Olives and Har HaZeisim, facing the Beis HaMikdash. Its ashes were essential to the purification process of anyone who contracted corpse tuma. You became tamei, being under the same roof as a dead body, touching a dead body, going to a cemetery. The only way to become tamei, to become tar, to become pure, is by being sprinkled with the ashes of the para aduma. So that para aduma is bought with the money from the shkalim. That's important to keep in mind. There's no, the para aduma is not sacrificed on the altar. It's not brought on the Mizbeach. It's not a carbon. But we'll see why. We'll see. We will. Actually, it doesn't say it in the Mishnah. But the reason why the Para Aduma is considered like a communal sacrifice is because the Torah refers to it as a chatas. Chatas is the word that's used for a sin offering. So being that the para is referred to as a chatas, as a sin offering, therefore it has the status of a communal sacrifice, and we can use the shkalim money towards that. V'soira mishtaleach. The soira mishtaleach means the goat that was sent out. And this referring to the fact that a pair of he-goats were purchased to be used as part of the Yom Kippur service in the Beis HaMikdash. By casting lots, one of these was designated to be for Hashem and was brought as a chatas, as a sin offering, and the other was designated for Azazel. Azazel means it was dispatched to the wilderness where it was thrown from a cliff. That's the Azazel. The animal for that is also purchased from the communal funds. Why is that? Now, if you think about it, you've got these 2 animals. The way that the animals were chosen for what they're going to be for is, they said you purchase 2 goats, one on one side of the Kohen, one on the other side of the Kohen. They drew lots. They put the lots on one that said for Hashem, the other lot said for Azazel. So it was, when you got the animals, you don't know which one is going to be for what. Which means each animal has to be an animal that could be used as a chatas, a sin offering for the community, for the Jewish people. So even though one of them at the end won't be used as a sacrifice, but being that we start off with both of them not knowing which is going to be the sacrifice, which means each one has to be fit to be a sacrifice, to be a communal sacrifice. Therefore, that allows us to use the money that we from the shkalim for both animals, even though one of them may not be actually a communal sacrifice. The lashon shel zahiris. Lashon shel zahiris means and a strip of red wool. Now, the paraduma was burned together with a piece of cedar wood and stalks of hyssop bound together in a bundle using a strip of red wool. That's what it was burned with. You burnt it together with these things. Again, a piece of cedar wood and stalks of hyssop bound together in a bundle using a strip of red wool. So when we talk about the strip of red wool, that's referring to the one that's part of the production of the paraduma. Being it's part of the production of the paraduma, it's like the paraduma. You can purchase it with the money of the shkalim. And that includes also the cedar wood and the hyssop. That also is going to be purchased with the money of the shkalim, like the paraduma itself, because it's part of its production. All right. So as the Mishnah says, boyin para v'sara mishtalech v'loshen shel zahuris, the paraduma, the goat that's sent out to Azazel, the strip of red wool, boyin mitrumas halishka. They come from the withdrawal from the lishka. They come, meaning when we talked about that they went into the 3 times a year, they took from the shkalim, and they used the shkalim to buy things. These things mentioned were bought with what was separated, with the monies that were separated. Meaning, even though these are not actual sacrifices necessarily, they're not that sacrifices, nonetheless, as we've explained, they are bought with the same monies, with the shkalim that are used for the communal sacrifices. All right. Now we're going to give examples of things you cannot use. We do not use the money that was separated from the chamber, the money that was separated from the shkalim 3 times a year. Now we're going to talk about things that you were not allowed to use that money for. Kevesh para, the ramp of the para aduma. What that means is like this. Many stringencies, I'm reading from the notes, many stringencies were employed in the preparation of the para aduma to ensure that it would not be exposed to tuma, to anything that would cause it to become impure. And they did stringencies, things that you didn't need to do necessarily, but in order to be super careful with the para aduma, this is what there were a number of stringencies that they did. One of these stringencies involved the construction of a special ramp or bridge that spanned the distance from the Temple Mount to the place where the para would be burnt on the Mount of Olives. I don't know how long that was, but it sounds like it was a decent. It was somewhat of a distance. Mm-hmm. This ramp was specially designed to protect those bringing the para from any unknown source of corpse tuma that might be buried along the route they had to travel. You know, they could have been there in case if there was a dead body below, and perhaps it could in some way or another cause truma or make a connection to tuma. It can make it would be some kind of a possibility of connecting to impurity. So therefore, they built this bridge with all the conditions necessary that in case there would be something, a dead body below, that it wouldn't make a difference. Okay. Now, since this ramp is used merely as a stringency and is not truly essential to the preparation of the para aduma, its expense could not be paid for from truma funds. Meaning they use it for the para aduma, but it wasn't essential. The red string, the hyssop, the wood, the cedar wood that was burnt together with the para aduma, that's essential to the para aduma. That's what you need to do when you burn the para aduma to create the ashes needed to make someone pure. But making this ramp was an extra stringency, wasn't essential to the para aduma. Therefore, we can't consider like the para aduma to be able to use the money from the withdrawals of the shkalim. Mm-hmm. All right. The kevetz sar mishtaleach. Another example is the ramp of the goat that was sent out. You spoke, right? They had the goat that was after when the goat that got the lot that said Azazel, it was let out to a desert to be pushed over a cliff. The he-goat sent to Azazel provided atonement for many of the nation's sins. Listen to this. Because of this, the people were eager for its service to be completed quickly. They wanted to get their atonement. Yeah. The Mishnah teaches that an elevated ramp was constructed to take the he-goat out of the city, so that the people should not pull at the hair of the one leading it in an attempt to rush him along and speed their atonement. That's what can happen sometimes. Yeah. That's what can happen. They were such in a rush of their atonement, right, that they wanted to rush him out. So what do? They gave him a yank on his beard, a yank on his head, we give him a little shove, whatever it is. And because of that, they made a special ramp so that he went alone and no one can get near him to be able to bring the soyer out to the desert. The Lashain Sheben Karnav, and the red string that was between its horns. Okay, this is again continuing with the Azazel animal. After one of the 2 Yom Kippur he-goats were designated for Azazel, a length of red wool was tied onto its head in order to mark it as the Azazel goat. Before the goat was thrown off the cliff, this length of wool was torn in half. Okay, one half was tied to the goat between its horns. The other half was tied at the top of the cliff from which the goat was to be thrown. Once it was thrown down and the nation received atonement, the piece at the top of the cliff would miraculously turn white. Since this strip of wool is not an essential part of the sacrificial service, it is not purchased with truma funds. It's part of the whole process, but has nothing to do with the chatas, nothing to do with the sin offering. And therefore, that's the third example of what we're going to say cannot come from the money of the 3 separations or 3 withdrawals. Next example, the amas hamayim, the funds necessary for the upkeep of the water canal that ran through the courtyard of the Beis Hamikdash. The waters of this canal were used to wash down the courtyard floor. Okay, that was so it has upkeep. You have to pay for it. Or the upkeep of the city walls and its fortresses. Or any other needs of the city, which includes expenses associated with digging various kinds of reservoirs for storing water in the city, the upkeep of streets and public spaces, and the protection of the city. Boyin mishiyare halishka. They do not come from from any of one of the three withdrawals of the shkalim used for the communal sacrifices, but they come from the leftover, which we learned yesterday. After the third withdrawal, there was no more withdrawals, and any of the money left after that, any of the coins left after that, are called shari halishka, the leftovers of the chamber. All the things that we just mentioned now, which may not be any part of which are not considered part of a sacrifice service, but are communal needs, they can be used from the leftover money of the shkalim. So these are all monies that were given. People gave them for their mitzvah of shekel. They gave them the money they gave for their portion of the communal sacrifices. But whatever coins were not actually used from the three withdrawals were called the leftover, and they were used for the things mentioned here in the Mishnah.
Even though they said we can't use this fund.
You can't use it from the three withdrawals, but you can use it from the fund, but not from the withdrawals, not from the three withdrawals that were made. Abba Shaul said, Kevesh para. When you're talking about the ramp of the red cow, right? The ramp, we said that they brought it in order to avoid any possibility of becoming tameh, becoming impure. The high priest would make it from their own money. So that means like this. That is, each Kohen Gadol who had the opportunity to prepare a para aduma during his term, over Jewish history, there were, I think, about 10. I think it was 10 para adumas. I think, and they were made over certain periods of time because it's not like you didn't need so much ashes. You don't have to be sprinkled with so much. So it would last for a while, and then it would run out or was coming to run out. Then they would be prepared again. Who was in charge of that preparation? The Kohen Gadol. So each Kohen Gadol who had the opportunity to prepare a para aduma during his term used his own personal funds to construct a new ramp for this purpose. A new ramp. Although the ramp that had been built for the previous para was still standing, right? What was wrong with the old one? It's still there. It was demolished, and the Kohen Gadol paid for a new one to be built for the new para. This was done to show the great level of care exercised by the Kohen Gadol in the preparation of the para aduma. A new bridge, one that's brand new, fit, brand new, no possible problems, whatever problems could have been. It was all part of showing the extra care that was done for the para aduma. Not going to use the old one, even though it's standing. We're going to start brand new. I'm going to make a new one, construct a new one, brand new, no problems. If there could be any problems, but when it was done with the Kohen Gadol's money. He paid for it. So the Bartenura says, "Ein halacha k'Abba Shaul." This Abba Shaul's, this is what he was of. This, I guess, someone that was his tradition. This is what went on. But at the end of the day, it would seem that Abba Shaul held that when it came to this kind of ramp, the new ramp, the Kohen Gadol was the one who had to pay it from his own funds. But the halakha is not like that. If he wouldn't pay, they would have used the shari alishka, the leftover money from the chamber. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you, Roy.
They demolished the old